Hello and welcome to Tell Your Story. Today we have a special guest on the platform. Her name is Rachel Dolezal, and we want to welcome her. We have a lot to discuss today about her new move to Arizona, her family, her book. Welcome to the platform.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for doing this virtual book fair. It's so exciting that you had that great idea during COVID.
Thank you. Thank you. So the first thing I do want to touch on is I did notice there was a recent bill passed with Katie Hobbs. Let's get into that first.
Okay, yeah. So the Crown Act is something that has gone to all states. It's legislation that actually several different companies, including the Dove Company, are kind of collaborating on and have put funding into. And anyway, so it has gone to all the states for decision. And I'm really proud that we were able to, we being everyone who called in and contacted the governor's office. And we had, there's the African American Museum of Southern Arizona here in Tucson, which is a new museum on campus at the University of Arizona. And they were able to also kind of rally a lot of support for that action. So we got the governor to pass that bill, which was super exciting. So what the Crown Act is about is basically banning hair discrimination. And a lot of people aren't aware that it's actually not illegal for companies without the Crown Act being passed to bar someone from employment or even fire somebody or otherwise discriminate against a person, say in a private school setting or other places, if their hair doesn't meet what's considered under Western values, professional standards, which often excludes any kind of natural hair textures, curlier hair, braids, locks, twists. A lot of traditional Black hairstyles or African originated hairstyles kind of fall under what Western European societies have considered to be professional styling. So that is just all very old language that needs to, it's outdated and we need to get rid of it. And there are many different pieces to this. I know that people probably will notice in the last five years, even 10 years, but very recently, a lot of commercials and advertising, and even, the lead of The Little Mermaid that's coming out this month, right? There's a lot of new visibility for natural hair textures. So locks, twists, braids, and natural, not just meaning like it's growing out of your head, but because every hair texture is natural, right? From straight to the kinkiest, curliest curl pattern, it's all natural in the human race. So just being able to celebrate whatever textured hairstyle you want to wear, or being able to have that empowerment of choice and agency is something that, in 2023 should be legal in every state. So I'm proud that Arizona has passed that bill. And the Crown Act is now official. Actually, Tucson and Tempe were the first cities to pass the Crown Act in Arizona, but it wasn't legal statewide or passed statewide until Katie Hobbs signed the bill.
That's excellent because there's so many young people even my son, our young Black kids that are in sports and things like that. They should have the right to be able to express themselves in whatever way they choose to and shouldn't be judged for it. And it's so many kids that have played sports, and I've seen where coaches made them cut their hair and things like that. And it's part of who they are. And so it's a completely unfortunate situation. Spread the word and use our platform for positive, measures to help this. And hopefully it will continue to change for the better, and we can, move forward as a country.
So that's, and I just wanted to, on that note, I just wanted to mention that if you're in a state where the Crown Act has not yet passed, you can Google that and find out if your state has passed it or not. But definitely call your governor, right? And you can even get it passed if you think your state is not the right political landscape to pass it on a state level. You can get it passed in your city, just with your local city municipalities. So that's what we did in Tucson and Tempe in Arizona before it was passed statewide. So this is something that everybody, it's kind of exciting because it's legislation that's already ready to go. So really all it needs is that signature, either on a city level with your mayor or on a state level with your governor. And you can, look up their numbers, call them and get on it. We want this passed in all 50 states. And like you said, it's something that not just affects, women. We get a lot of the, I don't know, just a lot of the attention in terms of hairstyles, right?
Yeah.
But it affects our kids, our sons, our boys and men as well. So definitely it's something that affects everyone. And you have a lovely curl pattern yourself, by the way. And I think that, it's just time to welcome all textures of hair. And I think, it's exciting again, because this is something that everybody can do, whether you're in the South, in the North, whatever part of the US. And I also would like to just drop in there that there's another civil rights action that's tied to or connected in topic to the Crown Act, and that is braiding freedom. And a lot of people don't know about braiding, locking, and twisting natural hair for hairstylists. It's not legal in half of the United States. So I think 26 or 27 countries right now are legalized, but the rest, the other approximately half of the country is not legal to lock, twist, braid, do natural hairstyles without a cosmetology license, which has, a high price tag and a lot of hours and doesn't teach any of these skills. So kind of civil rights issue. A lot of the best braiders are not going to have a cosmetology license. I was a braider for 26 years, and I know that I wasn't interested in doing highlights and, coloring and cutting hair and that kind of thing. I wasn't interested in doing cosmetology. I just was interested in braiding, locking, and twisting and doing weaves and things like that don't require any chemicals. And so I lived, Arizona is actually one of the states that is legal to braid, lock, and twist hair. But it has only been legal for, about 15 years or so. So it's kind of recent, even here. But so that's another civil rights issue that a lot of people aren't aware of. And I've marched in Texas with Isis Brantley. The Institute for Justice has been active on that issue, trying to get braiding freedom passed in all 50 states. But it's another thing that you could, if whatever state you live in, you can definitely make a difference when it comes to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sad that we even have to make a law for that, for something that, I'm doing a series within a series. So basically, I wanted to talk to families that had kids. My cartoon that is on YouTube, it's called My Blended Family, and it's a series based on the books that I wrote. I wanted to help for kids to be able to have that representation. And so
Right.
I wanted to talk about you and your family and your boys and
Yeah.
so let's get into that.
Yeah. So there are a couple different things actually that you've touched on that intersect with our family. So I and my middle son Franklin both have vitiligo, and on me it's not as noticeable, and on him it's also not as noticeable as maybe for some people, because it doesn't come on his face often. Like it'll start, like he'll get a flare up, and sometimes he'll have to get topical medication to tone it down, because he'll start freaking out that it's, he's kind of having it more visible on his face area. But he's been getting treatments for that since he was, I would say, like 5 or 6 years old. When kids are little, you can get an ointment that will kind of keep the margins of the spots because it's an autoimmune related condition. And so it'll kind of, stimulate the melanocytes around the perimeter of an area that might be losing pigment. And so it'll kind of keep it as small as possible and kind of keep it in check. So we had to do a lot of like topical treatment when he was little, and he still has to keep working with the dermatologist, to kind of keep it managed, but it's something that he lives with. And then my youngest son, Langston, has autism and is nonverbal. And well, I would say he's, I don't know, some people say pre-verbal, nonverbal. He's somewhere in the process, like he can say some words, but he doesn't really find it easy to use words for communication. And so he typically communicates with gestures and lots of hugs and facial expressions. He makes great eye contact. But I think it's great that you're touching on these things because there's so much that's intersectional. I think a lot of times people want to make, kind of reduce things to like black and white and, whatever, even with kids issues. And sometimes there's more that's going on. There are the hair issues. There are the special abilities or different abilities, neurodiversity, all of those things. I think it was out of, there was a young man recently who was being awarded some kind of special recognition for developing prosthetic limbs that have a spectrum of melanin, and so like different skin tones for prosthetics. And I think that just all of these things are kind of coming into the awareness. Like you said, we shouldn't have to, reinvent the wheel or pass laws or make extra efforts because we should all be inclusive. But I think it does sometimes take that extra consciousness to realize the needs of, like you said, these kids, foster care, prosthetics, vitiligo. I mean, there are these things that are kind of silently dealt with, but to bring them to the forefront, I think that's great that you're able to really address those issues through your cartoon Face On.
Thank you so much, because it means a lot to me, because I will continue and always advocate for children. The oldest boy in the cartoon is Preston, and my son's name is Preston because he said, if we move to Arizona and you got to name somebody after me in the cartoon, I said, cool, I'll do it. And so here we are. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up in your journey with autism and things like that. You have a beautiful family. The transition to Arizona, has it been good for you? Are you here to stay, or you think that you may move somewhere else? Has it been a good transition for you?
Yeah, well, we moved here, like you mentioned, COVID was happening in 2020, right? And that's the year that we moved to Arizona. So Franklin was one of those high school graduates that didn't get a graduation. And because of COVID, right? So his graduation was canceled, and he started college here at the U of A. So that's what brought us to Tucson.
Oh, okay.
And at the same time, Langston was 4 years old when we moved here. He was 4.5. And so he was in pre-K. And like you mentioned with the schooling online, it was tough because he had to start kindergarten as well on Zoom calls. And a lot of people, talk about like, well, kids need to be around other kids, which is true for social stuff. But for somebody that's nonverbal, Zoom is not a platform that's accommodating at all, because he has an ACA device where he can communicate, but on Zoom, there's no like buttons he can press. It's not like a tablet where he can, press green for yes or red for no, or something where he can communicate with the class. So it's basically the teacher asks the question and all the other kids can answer, but Langston cannot. And so it was just kind of like this frustration for him. And to this day, he still is triggered by, which is why I have to do interviews when he's either at school or when I was sick, because like if he sees a Zoom call come up, he's like, shut it down. Like he has so much just anxiety over like the whole Zoom, just, somebody talking on a screen. He wants to ride the school bus to go to school because he gets his mind right on the bus and he knows where he's going. He's prepared for school and he likes to ride the bus home. And that's, he likes his routine. And I think that it's hard those might seem like small things to a lot of people, but it's hard if you're not a parent of a kid with special needs. It's hard to probably imagine how crucial those little small details are for, their sense of calm and for their sense of just what's happening today. So if we go get in the car and go somewhere, he doesn't really know where we're going. I might tell him, but it's like in one ear, out the other ear. But if he's getting on the school bus, he knows I'm going to school and he's ready for that. When he gets there, he gets a book and he sits down, he hangs up his backpack and he does all the right things because he's in that mode, right? So he's very compartmentalized or context driven, which I think is a good thing. I mean, a lot of adults struggle with bringing their work home with them or separating their feelings from one situation to another. Langston will not be that person. When he gets a job, he will leave his job at his job. Right? It's like he has that skill already down. It's like, I do school at school. I don't do school at home. This is just so, yeah, the online at home COVID school was just not useful for him at all. And unfortunately, of course, we had to show up on Zoom every single day or else you lose your enrollment in the public school system or your IEP and all that stuff. So you've got to, it's like kind of find a way to make it through those 30-minute Zoom calls. But anyway, so that's when we came to Arizona in 2020. And I love the climate here. I did learn that there's pretty much nowhere that I'm going to be able to go where people don't recognize me. And, like into the foreseeable future, I'll have to deal with people's perceptions of me from the media, people's ideas, positive or negative, because there's love and hate. A lot of people are like, you're my biggest hero. And then the next person I might meet at the grocery store will be like, I don't want to even look at you because you're so terrible. And it's just like this really weird mix of incoming dynamics that I have to be prepared for wherever I'm going to live. So that part is not necessarily, it's not like a miracle pill or something moving to another state and everything's, just a brand new life.
Yeah.
But I do love the warm weather. I'm open to the idea of staying here for at least a while, like I found a great school for Langston and I'd love for him to matriculate through that elementary school. He's in first grade now. So that's a K-5 school. My oldest son is in Australia in law school and will probably start his international law career there when he graduates. My middle son at U of A is actually in London for another week. He's been there this semester for study abroad, but he'll be back here in Tucson next week. So yeah, kind of like I want to keep Langston close to Franklin and or Isaiah, one of his big brothers, because his dad isn't in the picture. And I'd like to, have him connected to a second person in the family if possible. So that kind of where they land will probably influence my decision ultimately for where I'm going to be living. But we do love Arizona, or I do anyway, for the climate. And one of the things that I've been able to do here is to work with, so the school that Langston goes to has a school garden and it has 23 plots of garden space. So it's a fairly sizable garden. And during COVID, it kind of all went to weeds and nothing was happening. So after COVID ended, I kind of started asking if I could volunteer since I grew up on the side of a mountain and know a lot about how to grow food. So I was like, I could help out with the garden, but they didn't have a garden coordinator. So then I became the garden coordinator, and I've been teaching gardening to kids throughout the school year every week. So about 119 kids a week come through the garden. And actually over 50% of the kids in specials come through and work in the garden. And it's a great place for them to have a sensory break from the classroom. So if a kiddo needs, is like feeling overwhelmed or feeling overstimulated, they can just step outside of the classroom and walk through the garden, and maybe they want to harvest some carrots or water some plants or whatever they want to do out there, just walk down the paths. It's just like such a gift that exists there. And I think that that's something that I've just seen kids grow in self-esteem and confidence, learning how to garden, knowing that they can go in there, they know what to do. And I hope that I can bring that joy to more kids too, like outside of that one school. That's something that I'm passionate about, having that inclusive space for especially kids with autism or ADHD or other attention and sensory processing, neurodiverse process. I just think that like the brain sometimes needs to decompress, and learning how to grow your own food is something that's a healthy and educational process as well. So.